This is just broken. The R&B singer Chris Brown's pleaded guilty to a fray over an incident at a London nightclub. It means he'll avoid a trial, with prosecutors saying they won't proceed with more serious counts of actual bodily harm. He'll be sentenced in October.
For 17 years, the word that followed Chris Brown everywhere was allegedly. Allegedly violent, allegedly dangerous, allegedly a man who couldn't control his temper. Again and again. Incident after incident, lawsuit after lawsuit, and yet somehow always allegedly, never quite proven, never quite resolved. A career that kept moving forward, tour after tour, hit after hit, while a shadow followed behind it that never seemed to catch up.
And once I got my phone, he saw me with my phone. Chris Brown punched me in the face. His security grabbed my phone, and I got escorted out of the party.
Then, in the summer of 2026, in a London courtroom, that word finally disappeared. Chris Brown stood up and said two words that 17 years of headlines had never actually produced. Guilty. Not an allegation this time, not a lawsuit that quietly settled or vanished, an actual admission in an actual courtroom to actually attacking a man with a bottle in front of a crowd of people, an attack captured entirely on camera. This is the story of how we got here, of a pattern that started with a single, unforgettable night in 2009 and somehow kept repeating for almost 2 decades, through lawsuits won and lost, through a documentary he tried to sue out of existence, through a courtroom judgment even his own former housekeeper is now fighting to collect, and of what finally happens this October, when a judge decides what 17 years of allegedly is actually worth. By the end of this video, you'll understand the complete arc of how Chris Brown went from a single defining incident in 2009 to an actual criminal conviction in 2026, and everything that happened illegally in between. You'll see the full pattern laid out in order. The moment that first defined his public reputation, the yacht party allegation that never went to trial, the documentary that tried to tell his story without him, and the lawsuit he filed to stop it that a judge ultimately threw out. You'll understand exactly what happened in that London nightclub in 2023, why the case took 3 years to resolve, and why he pleaded guilty this summer instead of standing trial this October.
When Manchester police arrested Brown in May, he was in custody for basically a full week before being released on a bail of $6.7 million so that he could continue with an already scheduled international tour.
And you'll see the parts of the story that rarely make headlines. A $13 million judgment from his own former housekeeper that's now reaching into his tour profits, playing out in real time as he crosses the country performing with Usher. We're going to be precise about what's proven, what was alleged and never resolved, and what's still an open legal question. This story doesn't need exaggeration. The verified record is enough. To understand where this story ends up, you have to go back to the beginning, February 2009, days before the Grammy Awards. Chris Brown was 20 years old, one of the biggest young stars in music, in a highly publicized relationship with fellow rising star Rihanna. Then, in the early morning hours before the ceremony, an altercation between the two of them left Rihanna with severe, visible facial bruising, injuries that were photographed and later became some of the most widely circulated images in modern celebrity history.
Why be ashamed?
Because I didn't want people to think that that's the kind of person I fell in love with that person. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing that that's the type of person that I fell in love with.
Brown was arrested and charged with felony assault. He pleaded guilty. It wasn't a rumor, wasn't a civil suit, wasn't something that stayed in dispute. It was an admitted, documented crime, and it instantly redefined how the public saw him. What happened next set the pattern for nearly 2 decades. Rather than derailing his career, the incident became something the industry and much of the public simply absorbed.
I just felt like, oh my God, here goes my little bit of privacy. just people exposed. Like, it's something that nobody wants anybody to know.
He kept releasing music, he kept touring, he kept winning awards, including eventually 2 Grammys of his own. But the incidents didn't stop being reported. They just started accumulating in the background, one after another, mostly without consequence. In 2020, at a yacht party hosted by Sean Diddy Combs in Miami Beach, a woman later referred to only as Jane Doe alleges that Brown intoxicated and SA'd her. She filed a civil lawsuit over the incident in 2022. That August, a judge dismissed the case without prejudice, meaning it could technically be refiled, but it never went to trial, and the underlying allegation itself was never proven or disproven in court. For years, that's roughly how these stories about Chris Brown tended to bend. An allegation, a headline cycle, a quiet legal resolution, or no resolution at all, and then eventually the next tour.
How are you feeling about it? Because it was a mistrial.
Damn, it happens.
Do you feel like this is a cash grab situation? I mean, she's asking for like $90 million.
Yeah, it's crazy. God bless everybody, though.
And can you tell us what transpired that night or anything?
No disrespect, I ain't really done interviews, but love your outfit again.
Oh, thank
I
you.
hope you have a wonderful night.
Okay, is there anything you could tell the fans?
Yeah, get ready for that tour.
Then, in October 2024, something different happened. Investigation Discovery aired a documentary called Chris Brown, A History of Violence, a film that gathered the pattern together in one place for the first time, walking through the abuse and assault allegations against him across more than a decade, including, for the first time on camera, an interview with the yacht party Jane Doe herself. Brown didn't let it stand unanswered. In January 2025, he filed a $500 million defamation lawsuit against Warner Bros. Discovery and the documentary's production company, Ample Entertainment. His argument was direct, that the documentary knowingly relied on a discredited accuser, that her account had inconsistencies his team say should have disqualified her, and that painting him as, in his own lawsuit's words, a serial rapist and sexual abuser went far beyond fair reporting into outright defamation. It was an aggressive legal swing, an attempt to not just deny the allegations, but to financially punish the company that platformed them.
Obviously, somebody's looking to get a check or start some. I don't know this old looking, this old, like dusty. He came to Vegas, he probably came to my room, it was too ugly to get in.
It didn't work. In January 2026, a Los Angeles judge dismissed the entire lawsuit. The ruling was notable for more than just the outcome. The judge specifically found that the documentary presented what the law calls a fair and true report of the accuser's statements and the existing legal record. And in a detail that cuts right to the heart of this story, the judge pointed out that Brown himself had previously admitted to punching Rihanna, undercutting his claim that a commentator's description of him having a predisposition to punching women in the face was somehow false or defamatory. The lawsuit, meant to clear his name, had, in the eyes of the court, done the opposite. It put his own admitted history back on the record explicitly, in a written judicial opinion. And while that case was still working its way through the courts, an entirely separate legal front was already active on the other side of the Atlantic. Rewind to February 2023. At the Tape nightclub in London's Mayfair neighborhood, prosecutors say Chris Brown moved through a crowded dance floor toward a man named Abraham Diaw and struck him twice in the head with a glass bottle. His friend and vocal coach, Omololu Akinlolu, then allegedly joined in, punching Diaw as he tried to flee, continuing the assault even after Diaw was on the ground. Diaw was taken to St. Mary's Hospital with head and knee injuries.
For a minute, I had my comments off about 2 years. Man.
Right.
Took them off because I felt like it wasn't healthy for me to even go back and forth for anybody's opinion. Because there's a lot of people out there in the world that's hurting. There's a lot of people out there that's going through stuff, hating on somebody or saying something negative might give them that little boost to feel better about themselves. It's pointless for me to go back and forth with them, but
Brown and Akinlolu left the UK shortly after, and a warrant was issued for their arrest. For 2 years, nothing happened publicly. Then, in May 2025, Brown returned to Britain for a tour stop in Manchester, his first time back in the country since the incident, and was arrested on the spot. What followed was over a year of denials. Brown pleaded not guilty to attempting to cause grievous bodily harm with intent. He pleaded not guilty to a lesser charge of assault causing actual bodily harm. He pleaded not guilty to possessing an offensive weapon. A trial date was set for October 26, 2026, a 5 to 7 day proceeding that would have put the full incident and Brown himself on the witness stand. Then, on July 24, 2026, everything changed. At a hearing at Southwark Crown Court, Brown changed his plea. In exchange for prosecutors dropping the most serious charges, the grievous bodily harm and weapons counts, Brown and Akinlolu pleaded guilty to affray. The Crown Prosecution Service didn't mince words about what actually happened. A senior prosecutor described it plainly: a vicious and unprovoked attack in a crowded nightclub using a bottle as a weapon, with the whole thing caught on surveillance footage. This is the turning point of the entire 17-year story, because for the first time, not in an allegation, not in a civil suit that got dismissed, not in a documentary he tried to sue out of existence, Chris Brown stood in a courtroom and admitted, under oath, that he had committed a violent crime. The consequences didn't stop there. Just days before the guilty plea, an entirely different legal battle was intensifying back in the United States. In July 2026, a Los Angeles jury awarded Brown's former housekeeper, Sanai Avila, $13 million in a lawsuit stemming from a 2020 dog attack. Avila alleged she was attacked by Brown's Caucasian shepherd, Hades, while taking out the trash at his home, suffering severe skin damage, facial disfigurement, scarring, partial vision loss, and nerve damage. Brown's team pushed back hard on the extent of her injuries and argued she bore some responsibility, but the jury sided decisively with Avila. Brown has since moved to have that verdict thrown out and is seeking a new trial. But while that motion works through the courts, Avila's attorneys aren't waiting. They've begun the process of trying to collect the judgment directly from his current earnings, specifically the profits from the R&B tour, the joint stadium run he's currently performing with Usher, along with his music royalties, licensing agreements, and merchandise sales if the tour income alone doesn't cover it. Picture that for a moment. While Brown tours arenas across the country, performing to sold-out crowds night after night, a separate courtroom fight is actively working to redirect a portion of that very income to a woman who says his own dog left her permanently disfigured. Two legal fronts, two different courts, two different continents, two entirely different kinds of harm alleged, and both converging on the same man in the same summer of 2026. So here's where the complete record actually stands. What's proven, beyond any dispute: Brown pleaded guilty to felony assault in 2009. He pleaded guilty to affray in 2026 for an attack captured on camera. A civil jury found him liable enough to award $13 million in the dog attack case, though that verdict is now being challenged. What remains genuinely unresolved: the 2022 SA allegation from the yacht party was never decided by a court. The case was dismissed before trial, which means the underlying claim was never proven and never disproven. The 2024 Fort Worth backstage assault allegations remain in the civil court system, and whether the $13 million judgment will actually be collected from his tour earnings is still an open question. What we have, mathematically, is a very small number of fully proven incidents sitting inside a much larger cloud of allegations that were never tested in a courtroom. Conflating those two categories would be inaccurate, but so would ignoring how rare it is, in this entire 17-year record, for any of it to result in an actual admitted guilt. On October 26, 2026, Chris Brown will stand before a British judge to be sentenced for a crime he has already admitted to committing. The maximum sentence is 3 years. What he actually receives is still unknown. There's something worth sitting with in that date. For 17 years, the pattern around Chris Brown was allegation, denial, and eventually silence. The story would fade, and the tour would go on. This time is different. Not because the crime itself is necessarily the most serious thing he's ever been accused of, but because it's the first time in nearly 2 decades that the legal system has actually reached a documented conclusion. Maybe that's the real story underneath all of this. Not just one man's pattern of behavior, but what it takes. How many years, how many allegations, how many lawsuits before accountability actually arrives in a form the law recognizes. And what it says that even now, it took a camera in a crowded nightclub to make it happen. The sentencing is still ahead. The housekeeper's judgment is still being fought over, and the questions this story raises about fame, about consequences, about how long a pattern can continue before something finally sticks, are still very much unanswered. If this story made you think differently about how these patterns play out in public life, let us know in the comments. And if you want to understand more about the industry ecosystem this all sits inside, including the Diddy taste that connects to more than one thread here, we've got that story ready for you too. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends, because October 26th is a date worth watching. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.